In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 keys to creating content that books sales calls consistently. First though, let's talk about some undeniable truths when it comes to creating and posting content. Number 1 is there are over 300,000 pieces of content being produced every single minute across social media platforms, which is freaking mind-blowing if you think about it. It's a pretty insane world we live in that there's that much creation happening. There's so much information being pumped out there, and you can easily see that information is a commodity. There's no shortage of information and how-tos. And so you can either add to the noise by just adding more kind of clutter out to that 300 million, which I think it's, I actually saw the other day from somebody that it's actually like 600 million or something insane. No matter what, there's a lot of it that's out there. So you can add to the noise or you can just cut through that shit. Like, which do you choose? And if you choose the latter, I'm going to walk you through how at least I do it and teach people how to do it. Number 2, though, is in the last couple years, content has become such a commodity. If you think about like the diamond industry, if there was just like diamonds all around, if you can just walk down the street and you would find piles of diamonds everywhere, diamonds wouldn't really be that valuable. Maybe people would love them because they look pretty and they're shiny and they glisten in the sun, but people wouldn't spend a lot of money on them because they're just freaking plentiful. And the same thing is happening with content. Like back in the day, you could just post some content like how to lose 10 pounds without dieting, and it would be awesome. People would be like, whoa! But nowadays, everybody's freaking doing it, and so people don't perceive it as valuable as they once did. And number 3 is content defined is anything that you share in social media. And what we're going to be talking about today is conversion content. And so to define conversion content, it's the process in which you take your audience through that leads them to converting to motivated and freaking happy buyers. And that's what we're going to walk through. The last key though that I want, or not key, sorry, the last truth that I want to walk you through, and then we're going to jump into these 7 keys, is that the key, ironically, I use that word here, to success with content is to shift people's perspectives, create demand, and lead your audience to reach out to you. That is absolutely key, because and this will segue right into the keys. I don't know how many times I could say keys in one video, but truthfully, like if you think about what's going on right now, if somebody is struggling to get a result, let's say you help somebody with weight loss, the reason they're struggling is not for a lack of information, obviously. Maybe there's too much information and they're overwhelmed and it's paralysis by analysis. That's a whole nother subject. But if we think about it, it's because that they don't have the right identity. They don't have the right thinking. And so therefore, they're taking the wrong actions. If they identify as this overweight person, they're going to tend to do things that overweight people do, which is go on diets because they lack the education, they lack the thinking. And so a lot of your content should go to shifting the way they think, helping them get out of some of the common misconceptions or traps that they're falling into in whatever your niche is. And when you can do this effectively, it's going to start planting the seed, giving people hope, and you're going to be the one that gets them to think differently, and so they're going to reach out to you because you're not just this coach that's just like, here's how to do XYZ. And there's times and places for that, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The second part of this is creating demand. Like when your content is leading somebody somewhere. So for example, let's say you're an online health coach and you do workshops for people. Well, a lot of your content should go to building up hype and demand for those workshops. Then you get onto a workshop where you can deliver massive value to people. And then all of a sudden, you're going to have people that want to work with you. Versus if you're just teaching all of the time on your social media over and over again, it squashes demand because people are like, why hire him or her when they're just teaching to me all of the time? They can just get you for free everywhere. And so there's a balance of giving out really good free information, and then there's a balance of shifting people's perspectives and leading them to a longer form piece of content like a workshop or live training or something along those lines. That's what's going to start getting more of the flow of inbound leads and people to book calls, which we're going to dive into that in just a second. Don't be the struggling coach. The struggling coach is something that you want to avoid at all freaking costs. These are going to be things like just posting content daily and giving out information and teaching, as I just alluded to. That's the way most struggling coaches give value to their audience. And that's like a freaking 2016 strategy. But there's just too much information out there, so you're just going to blend in. Or if you're only focused on the vehicle of content, like doing live videos, posting reels, doing free challenges, giveaways, scholarships, and you're just focused on the tactic or on the quote unquote vehicle, that's like somebody that's just focused on what they should be eating or what diet they should be on versus actually developing the habit of healthy eating, of proper nutrition. And another thing that struggling coaches do is they just freaking DM everybody. They're like sending out these spammy DMs or thank you for liking my content. And like they're just chasing every person that engages with their content. And if we're honest with ourselves, this is going to burn you out. And if you think about it, it's going to burn your audience out. And it's not an effective way to do things. Let's go ahead and break down the 7 keys that coaches who are sought after, coaches who book a lot of sales calls, coaches who are in demand actually do on a regular basis. And as a little bonus, if you look in the description of this video, I have my conversion content ebook. It is the exact ebook loaded with examples, templates, frameworks, and everything that you need to show you how I've done it and how I've helped a lot of other people do it. I have examples from other coaches as well in different niches on how I've created now over 7 figures in online sales from content. And so if you want to be able to see that, it's in the description below. Let's go ahead and dive into these 7 keys though, shall we? Key number 1 is the right hook. The right hook. And what I don't mean is like you're going to knock your audience out like Mike Tyson. What I mean is a hook that speaks to your avatar's specific pains and desires, even aspirations. When your content has the right hook, your content's not going to be saturated. And so I want you to think about the hook as a combination of the headline, and if you're doing a video, it's like the intro of a video. Or if you're writing a post or an email, it's going to be that first 4 to 5 lines. It's what is called in copywriting, and there's a great book called Breakthrough Advertising. I think it's somewhere around here. I was going to pull it out and show you. It's called Breakthrough Advertising. And in that book, it's like the copywriting Bible, if you will. At least to me it was. They call it the lead, where you're leading your audience in. And so you want to be able to speak to their specific pains, their desires, let them know what's in it for them, and then bring them in to the actual content. And so when you have the right hook, it's going to make sure that people, A, know that you know what they're going through and that you're speaking to them specifically, and it's going to get people to actually consume your content. And again, if you want to see examples, frameworks, all that stuff, just click in the description of this video and you'll be able to see all of the examples that I posted below. And if you're listening on the podcast, just shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram and just say content ebook and I'll send it your way. The second key is going to be the right CTA, which stands for call to action. And just like it sounds, when you have the right call to action, your leads are never scared off. It's not super salesy. You're giving them a call to take action. And so you don't seem salesy when you do this effectively. So your leads are excited to actually engage with you. And so a call to action has to be specific, it has to be clear, and it has to give them, it has to be simple. The language you use has to resonate with them. I see so many people do call to actions and they're like using things that don't even make sense. It's not super enticing for somebody to want to click or to respond or to engage with. So there's many types of call to actions, indirect and direct, but a lot of call to actions are like, hey, and so if you're looking to hire me, this might be an extreme example, but if you're looking to hire me, DM me the word, let's go. That's probably not going to work unless you have an extremely hot audience. And so a better call to action would be like, if you are looking to lose 30 pounds in the next 90 days without having to sacrifice any of your dinners with your family or doing long and freaking tense workouts, then what I want you to do is DM me the word screw diets and I'll connect with you. See, you're connecting something specific to them. You're making it really clear what they're going to get and what you want them to do. That's the power of a right CTA. And again, examples are in the ebook. The right angle is key number 3. So when you have the right angle, your content is positioned so that it's clear what your lead is going to get. And when you do this effectively, it's not about you, it's all about them. And secondly, the right angle helps position the piece of content or marketing material differently than anybody else out there. And a great example of this, I had a client of mine, his name is Alex Solomon. And when Alex Solomon started, to give you some context here, when he started with me, he had like around 1,500 Facebook friends. He was terrified of public speaking, didn't want to speak on camera. One of the big things I was teaching him was like, you got to speak on camera, dude. Because he wanted to. He wanted to get his message out there more, and he wanted to do video, but he was just terrified. And within a year, he had done like over 100 live videos. He amassed an audience between YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok of like close to 1 million people. And so when I was creating a piece of content, I could have just been like, here's how Alex Solomon built a 6-figure coaching business. And by the way, he actually worked in the manholes of New York City when he first hired me. And so it was a really cool angle I could use. And so I could have just done a typical angle, how he made $30K per month in his business and grew 1 million followers. Might have been a good hook, but I took a different angle on it. And I said how Alex went from the manholes of New York City to building a multiple 6-figure business and amassing an audience of 1 million people. That was one angle I took. Another angle I took on it was how he used this ancient, I can't remember the year, principle to build an audience of 1 million people. And I ended up taking the angle of the first when public speaking first became a thing. And so I took an angle, and I had to go and Google this, and I had to really think, and this is where creativity comes into play. I had to think about what would be a good angle that I can use for a post on this. And that's what it was. And so the right angle sometimes takes some creativity, but it's being clear with it, but it's positioning it in a way to where your content is different and it's very clear what the person's going to get. Number 4 key is the right perspective. When you shift your audience's perspective, as we alluded to at the beginning, it plants the seed of possibility and hope. This skill alone will massively increase the amount of inbound leads you get. I was on a group coaching call with some of our community, and we were talking about shifting beliefs. And so one of my strategy around shifting my audience's perspective is I think about the new belief that I want them to believe. What belief do I want them to believe? So let's use an example for weight loss. Let's imagine that we want people to believe that they need to invest in a mentor. Another angle we could take is that they need to dial in their calories or something like that. Then what I like to do is I think about what's their current belief? Like what actions are they taking? What's their current belief? And so say their current belief is like they're just hopping from diet to diet and nothing's really working for them. So once I identify those two things, there's a gap. And so I want to be able to help my audience bridge the gap. I think Russell Brunson calls this an epiphany bridge in his Expert Secrets book. I like to think about what is an insight or that I need them to get. So this is building the bridge. What's an insight that I need them to get that's going to make them believe the belief that I want them to believe? And then I think, what's a story, metaphor, or an analogy that I can use to get them to adopt my insight? And so let's just say that we wanted them to hire a mentor. You wanted them to believe that they should hire a fitness coach. And so what I would do is I would speak to the mistake that my audience is making around dieting and hopping from diet to diet, how it's unsustainable. And then I would tell maybe a story about a client or a previous client, or I would use a metaphor and analogy or whatever it is that would help make it make sense. And then I would drop the insight of how mentorship and hiring somebody is going to buy speed, and it's going to help you get way more progress in less time. And then they would get the insight, right? The belief. So the belief is that. So you can use this for anything that you want to get your audience to believe. Obviously use that skill for good. And I unpack this and I teach this a lot inside the In-Demand Coach on how to properly influence through storytelling, metaphors, and a lot of other different ways. You got to use this power for good. Some people use it for evil, but I trust that you're going to use it for good, but it's something that you're going to want to practice. The next one is going to be the right open loop. So when you leave an open loop in your content versus giving everything away, it causes your audience to want and need to reach out to you asking for more. So what I'm not saying here is that you should withhold information. Like, people are going to hire you for accountability and for help with implementation and to get your thinking. That's why people hire mentors. So what I'm not saying here is that you need to withhold information. I believe right now I'm doing my damnedest to give you everything I can on this subject here. But the thing is, when you create open loops, and it's really easy. In fact, there's multiple ways to go into it. It'd be really challenging to give you all of them because there's a lot of them. This video would be like 2 hours long. But a couple of the main open loops that you can use are client results. So when you're doing a video or when you're doing a post, you can open loop a client result. So I could say something like, hey, the first thing that I do with all of my clients in the Man Coach program is I help them sharpen up their messaging and their brand positioning, that their content and their marketing actually works. You know, you could do something like, hey, so the first thing I do with my clients, say you're in weight loss, the first thing I do with my clients is I help them dial in their calories so that the food they eat actually works for them. That's one open loop. Another open loop you could do is like an open loop call to action. So you could say something like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing a workshop here in the next couple weeks on XYZ subject. So you can use a little open loop to open loop a workshop or a live training or something along those lines. So it keeps your audience in your mind like, oh, there's more. I want to get more from them. And then that's going to increase the amount of inbound leads that you get and the engagement that you'll get on each piece of content. The sixth one here is the right headline. Now, we talked a little bit about this with the hook. It's going to be a lot of the same principles, but the headline matters a lot. So I wanted to separate this key because it will massively help the amount of people that click your videos, that read your posts or your emails, and that's going to get a lot more people to consume your content, which will increase the amount of calls that you get booked. And so when you have the right headline, it forces your audience to stop their scroll to consume your content. It doesn't matter how good your content is if nobody freaking sees it. And so there are principles to the headlines. And again, in the ebook that I have down in the description, I have a lot of different examples that you can look at, you can model, you can emulate. But a good headline is going to generate some curiosity. It's going to be borderline clickbaity. I don't recommend you clickbait anybody, so I want to be clear. But sometimes a really good headline is, it's going to speak to their pain or desire, and it's going to generate a little curiosity. And so I say it teeters on the line of clickbaity without going overboard and being actually clickbaity. And then you have to back up your content with, the headline with good content. Because if it's shitty content, people are going to stop watching. So speaking to like pain or desire, evoking curiosity, and perhaps even making it a little emotional, right? So you could speak to like the struggles. There's like negative bias for headlines and positive bias. Positive bias typically work better for a warm audience, where like a negative bias where you're speaking to the pain versus like the desire or aspiration, it typically works better for a colder audience, but you're always going to mix the two up. And the last one I have for you here is the right tonality. This is going to be very specific for video, but also you can use tonality in written content, and I'll explain how in a second. But the key here is when you use the right tonality in your videos, you will not only just hook more people into your content, but people will respond more to your call to actions when you're using it. And so whenever I'm giving a call to action, I typically try to use a downward tonality. Like, I'm going to be more authoritative with it versus like upward, which is like more like softer and curious. You want to be more authoritative, like you're a doctor giving somebody a direction, an order. But you can also, in tonality, we can go down a whole rabbit hole here, but tonality is, you can emphasize certain words. So if you want your audience to really get a word, you can emphasize it. You can speed up your cadence. You can slow your cadence down. You can talk louder. You could talk quieter. And all of that matters depending on what the point is that you want your audience to have. Now, you can also play with tonality with written content. You can capitalize words, bold words. You can use certain emojis. Be diligent with emojis. Don't overuse them like a 13-year-old girl. But it really works well when you can infuse tonality there. Those are the 7 keys that I found that when you apply them, at least a few of them, to each piece of content that you create, you will increase the amount of calls that you book from any piece of content that you put out there. I would love to know, we'll recap these really quick, and I would love to know what is the biggest one that you found. Is it going to be the right hook, being able to hook your audience in, the right call to action, right CTA, the right angle, being able to position it a little bit differently and let your audience know what's in it for them, the right perspective, being able to shift somebody's perspective, thinking about the belief you want them to believe, the old belief, and then creating that bridge The story that leads to the insight that gets them to believe the belief. The right open loop. How can you open loop? You can use what you do for your clients, a client result. You can open loop a workshop or live training or something that you have down in the pipeline for your clients or for your audience. The right headline, and then the right tonality. Which one or which ones are you going to plan on implementing more in your content? Let me know down below. If you found this video helpful, click subscribe for more. As always, remember your message matters now more than it ever has before. Don't be afraid to speak it. Be seen, be heard, and be impactful.